What's good, YouTube? Welcome back. Today it is Lazy Daze Tubby and I'm back at it again on my solo channel doing some more history reaction for you guys today, and it is some more Kings and Generals, Caesar, the Gallic and Civil War conflicts for you guys, and we are on episode 15, I believe, Caesar in Africa. I'm really looking forward to finding out what they've got in store for me today. Kings and Generals make amazing content, so if you haven't already, please head over to their page and links in the description box down below. If you're enjoying my reactions, looking forward to future reactions, you know what to do. You've got to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, but we are going to jump straight into this one.
Since the beginning of the Great Roman Civil War, Caesar had won battles in Iberia, Greece, Anatolia and Egypt, scoring victories in all three parts of the Old World. But the final triumph was nowhere in sight. Not everything was well in Rome. His own legions were agitated and his enemies were gathering forces in North Africa. This video will cover Caesar's attempts to fix internal issues, the beginning of his campaign in North Africa, and the Battle of Ruspina. It is now late in 47 BC, almost a year and a half since the Battle of Pharsalus. Caesar had fought Pharsalus, intending it to be a final killing blow to the Pompeian cause, and while it had been successful in severely handicapping the Pompeians, it had failed to destroy them completely. While Caesar had spent the last 18 months campaigning in the east, the Pompeian faction had been rebuilding in North Africa. Leadership had initially been offered to Cicero, but he had refused, preferring to use his political talents to try and influence the Senate in Rome. Instead, leadership was split between Cato and Scipio. Cato was something of a natural successor. He had consistently been one of Caesar's most ardent opponents and wielded great influence and prestige in the party, but he had next to no military experience. To balance this, Metellus Scipio was appointed as the overall military commander. Scipio had a long political career and served as consul alongside Pompey in 52 BC, had commanded an army in Greece against Domitius Calvinus, and had commanded the centre at Pharsalus. Despite these honours, Scipio had not really proved himself as a talented general. A number of his subordinates, most notably Labienus, were undoubtedly better commanders. Nevertheless, Scipio was given command due to his rank, prestige, and perhaps most of all, his name. Thanks to Scipio Africanus and Scipio Aemilianus, it was rumoured that no Scipio could be defeated in Africa.
I see.
A new senate had been created in Utica, and a total of 14 legions mustered, 2 belonging to the governor of Africa, Publius Attius Varus, 8 newly formed, consisting of local conscripts, as well as veterans who escaped from Iberia and Greece after the defeats at Munda and Pharsalus, and 4 of Juba's Numidian legions who were armed and trained in the Roman fashion, plus a huge amount of Numidian light infantry and cavalry, and 120 elephants.
That's a big force, you know. I know a lot of them are conscripts, so they're not going to be that experienced, so the thing that the army is lacking is veteran skill. Which obviously Caesar's going to have a lot of, and I think that's going to play a big part. But it's a sizable force.
His son, Gnaeus, had been sent to Spain to try and capitalize on the pro-Pompeian mutiny that had occurred during Longinus's tenure as governor, and there was a rumour that the Pompeian faction was planning an invasion of Italy itself. Caesar was aware of the threat, and had initially planned an invasion from both the west and east. Longinus would land his Spanish legions and attack from the west, while Caesar would invade from Italy. Longinus's abysmal administration of his province had scuppered this plan, however. Caesar would need to invade himself, and without the reinforcements from Spain. Caesar's African War was about to begin.
Okay.
As Caesar returned to Italy from Asia Minor, he visited various client kings and rulers from in and around Greece, collecting money. Caesar had been recruiting massively throughout the civil war, spending almost all his personal money in the process, and the financial situation was dire. Even with the money collected from these rulers, he still needed more. Upon his arrival in Italy, he borrowed huge sums from individuals and cities alike. Caesar likely had no intention of repaying these huge debts, but in his opinion, the money was being spent on the public good, and so was no different from an official tax or levy. The money was given, but it cost Caesar popularity.
Yeah, that's very questionable. Very questionable choice.
Caesar
there.
was well aware of this fact, however, and worked hard to keep the people on side. Clearly, Caesar was well aware that to win any war, it is vital that the population at large is kept on side. There was one other major issue that Caesar needed to resolve before he could begin the invasion of Africa. 4 of his veteran legions left in Campania and picked to be part of the African campaign had mutinied a couple of months before Caesar's arrival in Italy. These legions had been campaigning continuously for 13 years and had been promised payment and discharge following the Battle of Pharsalus.
You understand why they're pissed.
Caesar's campaigns in Egypt and the East had delayed this, and with their general gone for almost a year, Antony had lost control, the legions going so far as to loot wealthy estates around Rome, and even killing 2 senators who had tried to negotiate with them. 4 veteran legions presented a very serious threat if they could not be placated. Caesar recognized this danger and even garrisoned Rome. He was advised not to risk negotiating in person, but Caesar knew that these men were some of his best soldiers and would be much needed in the campaigns to come.
He doesn't want them dead, he wants them on his
He
side.
met them alone at the Campus Martius. In reality, the legions were attempting to bluff Caesar, hoping that Caesar would not allow them to be discharged, and they would then push for more pay. Caesar called their bluff and disbanded them on the spot. Calling them citizens rather than soldiers, he promised they would all be paid in full and with interest after his conquest of Africa and subsequent triumph with other legions.
Okay.
Caesar continued, allotting the men land from public holdings as well as from his own. Caesar concluded by saying, "I really have no further need of you, yet even so I will pay you the rewards, that no one may say that after using you in danger I later showed myself ungrateful, even though you were unwilling to join my campaign while perfectly strong in body and able to carry through all the wars that remain."
Just making them feel guilty and ashamed of themselves. What a smart move, Caesar. He's very, very clever with his words and swaying people to his side.
The legionaries were stunned. They considered themselves indispensable to Caesar and were shamed by how readily Caesar would use other legions to finish the war they had helped start.
Damn right. Too straight. You should be ashamed of yourself, boys. Ashamed.
As well as by how generously and quickly he would reward them. For these men, Caesar was everything. They had become wealthy and famous under his leadership. Now they had attempted to blackmail him, had their bluff called, and were being put out to pasture. The legions then asked whether they could volunteer to join Caesar in Africa, but Caesar simply turned his back and began to walk away. Desperately, the men begged him to stay and re-enlist them. Caesar feigned indifference before agreeing to reinstate all but the 10th Legion. This legion was his favorite, and he made it clear that he was insulted that they in particular had joined the mutiny.
I understand that. Like throughout this series we've heard about the 10th. I didn't realise the 10th was a part of the mutiny. What's Caesar gonna do?
Stung by his words, the 10th requested that Caesar decimate the legion, killing 1 in every 10 men as punishment so that they might be taken back into his favour. Again, Caesar feigned indifference, before relenting and accepting the legion back without punishment.
Okay.
Caesar did keep a list of the leading figures of the mutiny and assigned them to other legions in particularly dangerous provinces, but overall it had been a brilliant success. All 4 legions were brought back into the fold without a sesterce being spent or a drop of blood shed.
Damn fucking straight, Caesar! Damn straight, Caesar. Get those men on your side without bloodshed and you've got a stronger fucking force. Yes, Caesar.
It was a prime example of the importance of the persona and personality of Caesar. No other man at the time could have spoken to the legions and reached such a conclusion. With the legions once again under control, Caesar could finally begin his invasion, and he ordered 10 legions to gather in Lilybaeum, Sicily, around late December. Word had reached Caesar of the rumour that no Scipio could be defeated in Africa, and to counter these, he quickly found a minor member of the Scipio family to include in his officer's staff. He too now had a Scipio in his army. The veteran legions in Campania were still being organised for the campaign, but 6 legions were ready in Lilybaeum. 5 were relatively recently raised and untested. 1 was Caesar's veteran 5th Legion and some cohorts of the 10th, which had been stationed in Brundisium. Caesar was eager to sail as soon as possible, but the mutiny had delayed his plans, and he was now faced with bad weather.
Okay.
Never one for waiting, he embarked his men and ordered them to Africa at the first sign of a lull in the storms. Caesar spent 2 days in Sicily, giving instructions for the rest of the army when they arrived on the island, before setting sail himself on the 25th of December.
Okay.
He reached the African coast on the 28th of December, landing near Hadrumetum. In his eagerness to attack quickly, Caesar had risked the storms, and though most of his warships had managed to cross safely, many of his transports had been scattered, leaving him with just 3,000 infantry and 150 cavalry.
Okay.
Hadrumetum itself was under Optimate control, garrisoned by 10,000 Romans and Numidians under the command of Gaius Considius Longus and Gnaeus Calpurnius Piso. Caesar encamped just outside of the city on the coast. His men's morale was low due to the uncoordinated crossing, and they were blaming Caesar because, in his haste, he had not issued clear, written and sealed orders to his lieutenants as he usually did. They were right. Caesar's obsession with being quick had this time backfired.
Oh no.
Caesar was in a dangerous position. If the Optimates sallied out of Hadrumetum, or if enemy reinforcements arrived, his small force could be caught against the coast. Initially, Caesar attempted to negotiate with Considius, but the messenger was killed and the message sent unread to Scipio. He had now spent a day and a night around Hadrumetum, and no more of his army had arrived. Caesar made some minor probing attacks on the city, but quickly decided he had neither the numbers nor amount of veterans needed to storm the city.
Okay, so he's smart.
To make matters worse, his scouts also reported that a large force of Numidian cavalry was closing in. With little choice left, Caesar broke camp and marched away from the city. As soon as he did, though, the Hadrumetum garrison sallied out, soon being joined by Juba's cavalry, which had just arrived. They seized the deserted camp, and the Numidian cavalry began harassing Caesar's men, forcing Caesar to halt and form a defensive line. Clearly, this had been the Optimate plan from the start. Rather than attack Caesar in a fortified camp, where he was known to be particularly dangerous, they had waited for a chance to catch him in the open.
Very smart by the opposition here.
Initially, it looked as though Caesar would be surrounded and caught, just as Curio had been years earlier. Unlike Curio, however, Caesar refused to allow his enemy to hold the initiative, ordering his small numbers of cavalry to charge the Numidians.
Okay.
Caesar was well aware that they did not have the numbers to win such a fight, but he was also aware that the Numidians would retreat and skirmish rather than engage in hand-to-hand fighting. It was vital that Caesar keep his men moving, rather than stop and risk becoming surrounded, and with his cavalry having repulsed the Numidians for the time being, Caesar seized the opportunity, ordering his legions to continue their march with the few veteran cohorts and cavalry at the rear. His veterans could be counted on to stand their ground against the incoming missile fire, while the cavalry would charge and scatter the Numidians. Though progress was slow, Caesar was able to continue this fighting withdrawal until he reached the safety of the town of Ruspina on the 29th of December. Disaster had been averted, but Caesar was still in a precarious position. He next moved on to the town of Leptis on January 1st, where he was joined by some of his scattered transports. As well as his men being scattered, so too had his supplies. He attempted to forage off the land, but patrolling Numidian cavalry would ambush his men, making the task almost impossible. He sent requests to Sardinia, Sicily and other provinces for more grain, and focused on consolidating his position. He left 6 cohorts in Leptis, 1 legion in Ruspina, and took 7 cohorts of veterans from the 5th and 10th to the harbour, boarding his warships. He did not inform any of his men what his plan was, but his veterans were confident that Caesar would have a winning strategy.
That's very interesting, and it shows they had a lot of faith in Caesar.
In fact, Caesar's plan was to set sail with the veterans to find the rest of his scattered fleet. Caesar had not told his men this, because he was nervous that the garrisons in Ruspina or Leptis might be captured and reveal his plans. Clearly, Caesar was rattled and being cautious. Fortunately, the next day, a large number of the lost transports arrived, bringing much needed numbers. With this larger force, he could now attempt to forage in security. He made camp at Ruspina, and then on the 4th of January, set out with around 15,000 men, approximately half his total force, to forage for supplies.
He took half of his force just to forage? Just to forage?
After marching 3 miles from Ruspina, his scouts brought news that the enemy was close and closing in fast. Quickly, Caesar ordered his small contingent of cavalry and archers to join him from Ruspina, while he rode ahead with his bodyguard to confirm the information. In the distance, he saw a huge dust cloud approaching, and ordered his men to prepare for battle. In total, he would have 15,000 legionaries, 400 cavalry, and 150 archers.
What's the opposition got?
The Optimate force facing him was significant. 12,000 of mostly light infantry, 8,000 Numidian cavalry, and 1,600 heavy cavalry.
That's a lot of cavalry. 8,000 light cavalry, and then 1,600 heavy cavalry on top of that, compared to Caesar's, 400 heavy cavalry? That's a big difference through, it's just a big difference through units. And cavalry strong.
Made up of Gallic and Germanic mercenaries, with a smaller force of a further 1,600 Numidian cavalry close by to reinforce. Perhaps the most dangerous aspect of the Optimate army, however, was its commanders. The main force was commanded by Caesar's once right-hand man, Labienus himself, the reinforcements by Petreius. Labienus was undoubtedly the best general on the Optimate side, and his years of campaigning with Caesar had made him familiar with his tactics. Petreius was also talented and experienced, having 30 years of military experience, including having fought Caesar at Ilerda and Pharsalus. This would be a difficult fight. Looking to make the most of his large number of cavalry, Labienus deployed his men in a long, tightly packed line, with infantry interspersed among cavalry in order to hide his numbers. On both flanks he stationed his heavier cavalry. Caesar, aware that he could be easily outflanked, stretched his line to have as broad a front as possible, putting what missiles he had in front and the small amount of cavalry on the wings. He kept his men in position, not wanting to make the initial move. With his smaller numbers and the enemy's cavalry advantage, he thought it best to be defensive. Labienus, on the other hand, used his cavalry to quickly seize the nearby highlands, at the same time forcing Caesar's cavalry to stretch thin to try and counter any flanking attacks. Labienus was well aware of Caesar's style of battle, which relied upon having room to maneuver and using terrain advantages, and had now denied these to him. With these initial moves completed, Labienus began the battle.
Okay.
He ordered his men to charge the length of Caesar's line, Caesar's legions countercharging at the last minute. As they did though, the Numidian cavalry fell back, while the infantry hidden among them pinned Caesar's infantry. The Numidians then skirmished back and forth, pelting Caesar's line with javelins. His men attempted to charge the cavalry to chase them off, but Caesar gave strict orders for his men to hold the line. Meanwhile on the flanks, Caesar's cavalry, badly outnumbered, had been routed after a brief but brave struggle. Labienus now had Caesar's force entirely
This is not looking good for Caesar. What's he gonna do?
surrounded.
Come on,
At this
Caesar.
point, Labienus removed his helmet and rode around the surrounded Caesarians, encouraging his men and mocking Caesar's, attempting to demoralize them. He mocked them as being raw recruits and for being foolhardy for following Caesar and being caught in their current predicament. A veteran of the 10th Legion from one of the cohorts who had crossed with Caesar recognized Labienus. Removing his helmet, he threw his javelin, shouting out that Labienus would know he was being attacked by a soldier of the 10th. Labienus's horse was killed, and Labienus was taken from the battlefield after it fell on him. Nevertheless, Caesar's men were still struggling, attacked from all sides, and they could do little except protect themselves from the hail of missiles
Let's just have a shout out for that legionnaire in the 10th.
from the Numidian troops. It was a dire situation, and panic was spreading, and an Aquilifer even attempted to flee, forcing Caesar to grab him, turn him to face the enemy, and push him forward to the front. The day was coming to an end, and Caesar knew that he needed to reach his defences around Ruspina before nightfall, or else lose his army. He ordered every other cohort to turn around, his line now fighting on two fronts, and gave the order for them to throw a hail of pila and charge in both directions. It is a testament to the training of Roman legions that such a maneuver could be organized
How are they doing this without
and
fear?
executed in the midst of battle. Taken by surprise by this sudden attack, the Numidian light infantry and cavalry pulled back to skirmish and avoid hand-to-hand fighting. Caesar seized the opportunity and began withdrawing his forces from the battlefield as quickly as possible. As he did, Petreius arrived with his reinforcements. With these fresh troops, the Optimate force pursued Caesar's men, looking to re-engage.
Oh no.
This time, Caesar took the initiative, ordering his men to turn and charge their pursuers. Petreius was wounded in the skirmish, while the Numidians once again fell back, not wanting to be pinned in melee. This time, Caesar continued to push them back over the high ground. Caesar paused his men here, wanting to see if the enemy would attack now that he had the terrain advantage. The Optimates were exhausted, had both commanders injured, and had inflicted as much damage as they could in a day. They each withdrew to their camp, Caesar's men also withdrawing to Ruspina.
No way Caesar got out of that. I am so shocked. I'm so surprised. Wow. Wow, wow.
The casualties for both armies are not known, but given the encirclement of the Caesarian troops, it is likely they suffered more than the Optimates. Caesar had very nearly lost the entire campaign. If Labienus had not been wounded, he may have been able to better control the Optimate army and keep the pressure on Caesar, leaving no chance for him to escape. But Caesar was saved by his own strategic talent, his men's training, and luck with the wounding of both enemy commanders.
Damn straight, that legionnaire from the 10th Legion is a god.
Nevertheless, Caesar had managed to avoid having his whole army destroyed, as had happened to Curio. He would be able to consolidate and seek a more favourable engagement later. Caesar's African War was not over yet, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see the next video in the series. Please consider.
And you know I have, so I hope you guys have as well. I really enjoyed this episode and I'm really enjoying this series. Kings and Generals make amazing content. Haven't already, head over to their page, links in the description box down below. If you're enjoying my reaction and you're looking forward to more, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I will catch you in the next video.